Hey everyone, if you're new here, my name's Lottie, and if you're a subscriber, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to share today's video with you because we are setting up my 2025 reading journal. This is my very first time ever setting up a reading journal, and honestly, I'm so happy with the way that it turned out. And the journal I'm using this year is from Archer and Olive. It is this mustard yellow color with some embroidery on the front that has like a strawberry vine and ladybugs and flowers. In case you're not caught up on the saga, in my past few vlogs, I actually ordered a reading journal from Papier back in early December to use for 2025, and I showed that in a video, but then in another video I showed that I actually ordered this one instead later on because I realized I needed a journal with thicker paper. So this journal has 160 GSM, which is exactly what I was looking for. It being a B5 size, it's a little bit bigger than a traditional journal size. It's a little bit more of like a notebook size, and I really enjoyed having a little bit of extra space for all of my spreads, so I'm happy with the decision to get a little bit of a bigger journal, and I'll link it down below in case you want to check it out. I want to acknowledge that for this video I took a lot of inspiration from different book and journal creators here on YouTube. Rachel Catherine is one of my absolute faves, and I used a ton of her recommendations from layout ideas to supplies, so you'll definitely see her influence, I feel like, in this video. On top of Rachel's videos, I also really loved watching Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride and Anna Brunn's reading journal setup videos for this year. They were both such excellent videos, wonderfully done, so I'm going to link all three of the reading journal setup videos that inspired me the most down below in case you want to check those out for more inspo too. I'm going to split this video up with a few timestamps, so feel free to skip around if you want. First, I'll walk you through the actual setup process, setting up my reading journal for the year. Then I'll give you a final flip through of the spreads that I created. Finally, I'll talk about all of my favorite supplies and tools that helped it all come together. All right, enough chatting. Let's jump in and set up my reading journal for 2025. Okay, everyone, welcome to my 2025 reading journal setup. I'm so excited to share this with you. I think my journal turned out beautifully, and I can't wait to show you how I set it up. To start, I worked on the very first page that comes in all journals, the one that says, "This journal belongs to ... So instead of handwriting my name, I used these vintage letter stamps that resemble kind of like a typewriter font. I love how they give off a perfectly imperfect vibe, much better than the actual imperfections of my own handwriting. And then next I moved on to the first actual page of the journal, which I wanted to turn into a more formal name page. For this, I repurposed pages from an old, well-loved copy of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Don't worry, I have my hardcover copies safe on my bookshelf. I didn't want to create waste by printing new pages or buying something extra, so I thought it would be fun and meaningful to use these as decorative elements throughout the spread. I softened up the edges of some of the torn pages with a corner punch and started arranging them as part of the layout. For the centerpiece of this page, my actual name, I printed it on sticker paper in a font reminiscent of folklore, obviously, and I layered that over some textured scrapbook paper to give the spread some dimension, and then added some pops of color with scrapbook paper that I trimmed using my paper cutter. To pull everything together, I used a variety of washi tapes. I included a book-themed washi tape that I found from a local bookstore, as well as some smiley face washi tape and some heart washi tape. I also added a few butterfly washi stickers from one of my sticker books, along with the one that says "Take it easy," which felt like a perfect touch. Finally, I cut out a heart shape from the textured paper and glued it down as the finishing detail. So that is my completed formal name page, whimsical, personal, and totally me. Next up, I wanted to create a proper title page for my reading journal. I started off by pulling out some of the colorful scrapbook paper that I had, and then I also found this butterfly piece of scrapbook paper in the back of my washi sticker book, so I cut that out as well and began experimenting with different layouts. It definitely took a bit of trial and error to find a design that I really loved, but once I had a plan, I started sticking down those scrapbook style letters to use as the title. I layered in some torn book pages from earlier and textured scrapbook paper, arranging everything till it felt just right. Then once I was happy with it, I started gluing everything down. To add some extra detail, I also used my embossed embossed label maker, and I used this kind of like light green colored label and stamped 2025 on it. I also printed out a small bow sticker, so I used that here and added some metallic star stickers for a little bit of sparkle. And I also pulled in a few of my washi stickers, one that says "Ticket to Anywhere," which felt perfect for a reading journal, and another with a typewriter keyboard design. And of course, as a finishing touch, I layered some washi tape over the spread. And then at the bottom of the page, I also decided to add a handwritten quote on a small post-it note. And that's it for my title page. I'm so happy with how these first few pages turned out, kind of set the tone for the rest of the journal. All right, let's dive into the actual reading journal spreads. The first one I worked on is my 2025 book count page. My goal this year is to read 100 books, so I started by pre-tracing 100 square boxes, and now I'm just going over those with a darker pen, outlining each square and adding the numbers 1 through 100. The idea is that each time I finish a book, I'll color in a square, and by the end of the year, this page will hopefully be filled with vibrant colors. To create the header, I ripped up a strip of scrapbook paper to fit the top of the page. I used my embossed label maker to stamp out 2025 book count, and I placed the label over the scrapbook paper and finished it off with some book themed washi tape along the bottom of the page. There was an empty corner of the page that I decided to turn into a color coded key. So I'll be coloring each square based on my star rating for the book. So to label the key, I also made some green embossed labels that say color and then code and placed them on either side. On the opposite page, I created a spread for my bookish goals. I found this idea on Pinterest and was immediately obsessed. So I sketched a little envelope, then cut a piece of scrapbook paper to look like a letter coming out of the envelope, and I crumpled and uncrumpled it to give it a worn, textured look and wrote out my reading goals for the year on it. After that, I colored the envelope brown and added a sticker to the letter and wrote goals at the top of the page. To finish the spread, I felt like the sides of the page were just a little bit empty, so I added some gray scrapbook paper to balance it out. And of course, I couldn't resist incorporating more washi tape, and that is it for my book count page and my bookish goals page. Next up is my 2025 ins and outs page. I actually already made a whole video about my bookish ins and outs for the year, but I wanted to document my thoughts at the start of 2025 in my journal, what I want to leave behind in 2024, and what I'm bringing with me into the new year. For this page, I mostly used markers and pens, but I also added some scrapbook paper for texture. And of course, I couldn't resist layering some washi tape and washi stickers on top to tie it all together. And I also just colored in some yellow stars around the spread and added a few more pops of color. But overall, I'm really happy with how this spread turned out. It feels really like colorful and playful and fun. Then I moved on to my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 challenge page. If any of you guys want to join me in this challenge, I'd love to do it together. I did get the idea from someone else in a book journal video or on Pinterest or something. I can't quite remember where, but I customized it to fit my own reading priorities for the year. The spread itself is pretty simple. I used more scrapbook paper, washi tape, pens, and of course my embossed label maker. I made a blue label that just says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 challenge and layered that into the header. By now you've probably noticed the supplies I'm using the most. I definitely have my go-tos and was getting in a flow, but for the challenge, I am trying to do 1 month reading only from my physical TBR, reading 2 classics, 3 rereads, 4 nonfiction books, and I'd love to complete 5 series. I left space to check off each challenge as I complete it and to jot down details, and I'm so excited to track my progress on this page throughout the year. It's simple but functional, and I love how it turned out. Next up, I worked on my 25 books I want to read in 2025 page. For the header, I just printed out these bubble style scrapbook letters and cut them out and layered them over some blue and green scrapbook paper to tie everything together in the header. I did have a little mishap with the spacing and just didn't really like the way that it was looking, so I ended up cutting and rearranging some pieces. In the end, I was really happy with how it turned out, even after a bit of rearranging. So once the header was in place, I I added some heart washi tape, and then I just started laying out all of the book covers that I printed. It took a bit of time to decide how to arrange them, but I didn't really go with any strict pattern or grid. Instead, I just kind of bunched them around the page in a way that felt more organic and fun, and I also kind of tried to space out the genres and the colors of the covers for a more balanced look, and I think it worked really well. My idea for this spread is to highlight around each book cover once I've read it, and that is my 25 books I want to read in 2025 page. Next up, I worked on my spread for my most anticipated 2025 releases. I actually have a whole separate video all about the books I'm most excited for this year, so I'll link that down below if you missed it and want more details. But for this spread, I started by creating handwritten headers using markers and scrapbook paper, then added some washi stickers to the headers for a little bit of extra flair. And then below the headers, I just traced out boxes that will go underneath the book covers of my most anticipated releases. So each box has a space for the release date of the book, as well as a smaller box next to it so I can check it off once I've read the release. I might also highlight the box when I finish the book. I haven't decided yet, but either way, it'll be a fun way to track my progress. I pre-printed the covers of about 20 books that I'm most excited for, but I didn't include every book just yet since some covers haven't been fully revealed, and I also left space for any new releases that catch my eye throughout the year. I love how this spread turned out. Next up is probably my most technical spread, and it is my formal reading records page. So I decided to create this spread using a Dutch door design, which involves cutting one of the pages to be smaller so it creates kind of a layered multi-page effect within a spread. But before starting, I had already sketched out my vision in pencil, so I began by carefully going over everything with pen. This spread required a lot of attention to detail because it's essentially a 3D grid design, a kind of Excel sheet on paper. I outlined the grid across all 4 pages, including the Dutch door, which definitely took some time but was worth it. For the header, I hand wrote reading records and then used my Crayola super tips to color in the pages in the background. I did soft pink in the background, and then the header I did some pops with teal blue and then a little bit of a darker teal to enhance the 3D effect. And then at the top of the grid, I numbered the first row for tracking book 1, book 2, book 3, and so on. And then the other columns are title, author, genre, page count, and star rating, which I filled out across all of the pages. This spread is where I'll log every single book I read this year in the order that I read them. And once it was finished, I was so satisfied. I loved how it turned out, and it was a labor of love, but well worth it. Then after completing my reading records, I felt inspired to tackle another Dutch door spread, which is my series tracker page. If you're doing a Dutch door yourself, one pro tip is to use an X-Acto knife to cut the page as close to the spine as possible, and then also using a rounded hole punch to kind of smooth out the edges. It really makes the Dutch door look like a true mini page within the journal. But for the series tracker, I started with a banner style header. I sketched it out beforehand, filled it in with pen, and then colored it using some neon yellow, green, and orange markers and highlighters. Then came the less exciting but essential part, which was creating the grids for each series I'm in the middle of. So using a ruler, I drew out kind of mini Excel style grids for each series, leaving space to track all the books in that series. For example, under the Empyrean series, I wrote Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and Onyx Storm, and added small boxes to check off once I've read each book. I plan to highlight the books that I've already read to bring the page to life visually as I go. I'm going to go back and fill out this page later. You'll see the final result, and it really comes to life. I highlight all of the books I've already read as well as check them off. And then I also added washi tape at the footer of both of the pages to tie the design together with the Dutch door. Finally, I left a few sticky notes with ideas for other series that I have been wanting to start, and plenty of extra space for any new series that I pick up throughout the year. I may have overestimated the space I'd need with 2 full pages, but I figured, it's better to have too much room than not enough. So that is my series tracker. Next up, I worked on my books per month tracker and my monthly favorites page. I started with the header for the monthly favorites page, and I just printed out these heart-shaped letters on some photo sticker paper and cut them out. And then I attached those letters to some hot pink and light pink scrapbook paper for a fun and colorful title. And then after that, I switched back over to the books per month tracker to work on that. Quick note, there's a bit of a lighting change here because the sun was setting, so I had to adjust my artificial lighting, so hopefully it still looks okay. For the books per month tracker on the left side, I outlined a bar graph to track how many books I read each month. I decorated the page with some more torn Harry Potter pages and scrapbook paper for texture, then added some ransom note style letters spelling out books per month at the top. I did this the same way with the photo sticker paper. And at this point I was getting pretty tired and my handwriting just wasn't turning out great. So I leaned on the printouts for the headers, which I think was a great decision because I found that I was much happier with the final result when it wasn't up to my own handwriting. I also added a strip of the book washi tape along the right side of the page, and on the left side of the graph, I used my embossed label maker to create some numbered labels, 1 through 16, running vertically up the page. The graph's x-axis features the months of the year, which I stamped in using my vintage typewriter letter stamps. And the idea is to fill in the bars each month as I track my reading. So by the end of the year, I'll have a visual of how much I read each month. And to keep everything aligned, I sketched some faint pencil lines across the graph as guides. After finishing the tracker, I went back to my monthly favorites page. So for this spread, I used the embossed label maker once again to create uniform labels for each month using abbreviated versions like Jan, Feb, and so on. And I rotated through different label colors for variety and then organized them into 4 rows with 3 months per row to represent kind of each quarter of the year. The idea for this page is simple. I'll add the cover of my favorite book for each month. So by the end of the year, there will be 12 book covers displayed here, creating a snapshot of my reading highlights. To make the layout easier to follow and fill in, I left some placeholders where I'll stick the covers as the year progresses. And that's it for my books per month and monthly favorites pages. Next, I worked on a really fun spread inspired by an idea I found on Pinterest, which is the Read the Rainbow challenge. For the header, I started by tracing a Reading Rainbow logo onto a tan piece of scrapbook paper and coloring that in. And then I added it to the top of the page, layering it with some other colorful scrapbook paper for a bright, cheerful look. And then the main part of the spread features books traced and colored in with rainbow shades. So blue, green, red, yellow, orange, pink, and purple. And then at the bottom of the page, I added rainbow washi tape, which I was so excited to use. I feel like it ties it together perfectly. And the idea for this spread is to read books with covers that match each color in the rainbow. So as I complete a book, I'll print out its cover and place it over the corresponding box. I'm also toying with the idea of adding like a bonus challenge, like reading a book with a blue cover that's written by a queer author, features queer characters, or explores LGBTQ plus themes. I just thought it'd be a fun way to give the spread a little extra layer of meaning. It's flexible. We'll see how it goes. I just thought it was fun and I'm so happy with how this one turned out. The next idea I worked on is my TBR cart page. I started by sketching out a TBR cart and filling it in with books that are currently sitting on my physical TBR cart. To decorate the page, I used some scrapbook paper for the header and added a printed sticker that says TBR cart and kind of cut that out. I, of course, included some washi tape along the header and the sides of the page to tie everything together. And I also stamped the letters from 2024 using my vintage letter stamps. This is essentially a snapshot of my TBR from 2024, and the idea is to color in each book as I read it. My goal is to finish all of these books by the end of the year, but if I don't, it'll be a sign that maybe it's time to either prioritize them or unhaul them. It's such a fun way to visualize and track my progress while also motivating me to tackle the books that have been waiting the longest on my TBR cart. Next up, I worked on my A to Z challenge spread. For the header, I used my trusty sticker photo paper again because, to be honest, I was way too tired to trust myself to handwrite it at this point. And I just wanted to give like a quick reality check. This journal setup probably took me about 12 hours. It was an all-day project. So if you're planning to do something similar with this many intricate spreads and designs, I definitely recommend pacing yourself. Maybe tackle a few spreads each day over the course of a week. It'll definitely make it more manageable and more fun. But anyways, back to the spread. For the A to Z challenge, I created a header and a footer using the scrapbook paper, Harry Potter pages, washi tape, all my usual suspects. And I outlined 26 boxes on the page, one for each letter of the alphabet, and filled in the letters A through Z inside of them. The idea here is to read a book this year with a title that starts with each letter of the alphabet. So as I go, I'll cover up each box with the printed cover of a corresponding book. I thought this was a really fun way to challenge myself to read a variety of titles, and I know it'll be be a challenge to find ones like X and Z, so I'm already asking for recommendations for those, but I can't wait to see it fill up as the year goes on. Next up is my reading bucket list spread. I decided to be brave and handwrite the letters at first, but I ended up hating them, so I switched back to printed ones instead. I used my usual supplies: scrapbook paper, washi tape, sticker paper. This is one of my favorite spreads, but it took a long time to finish. Thankfully, I had pre-traced everything in pencil, so this part was mostly just going over it all with pen and adding the finishing touches. The idea behind this spread is similar to my TBR prompt jar. It's a collection of 40 different reading prompts to guide my reading throughout the year. Some examples include under 300 pages, a classic, enemies to lovers, a new to me author, a tearjerker, start a new series, and so on and so forth. Each time I complete a prompt, I'll color in the corresponding box, creating a fun visual tracker as I go. It's just an extra challenge for myself, and I'm really excited to see how many I can check off by the end of the year. And that's actually it for all of the front matter in my reading journal. So I've now finished all of my annual challenges, spreads, and trackers. So next up, we're diving into the monthly spreads. And I don't create my monthly spreads in advance. I just create them as I go throughout the year. But I did need to create my January spread. So to kick things off, I designed a title page for the month on the left using a fun concept inspired by the "Thank you, have a nice day" design, but instead it says January, have a nice year. Added some star stickers and kept it kind of simple, but I thought it was really fun. On the right side, I wanted to list out my January TBR for the month. So for this, I used my usual mix of washi tape, scrapbook paper, glossy photo sticker paper, and printed book covers. I printed out the covers for the books on my TBR this month and just stuck them onto the page. I also added some final touches with the letter stamps to stamp in 2025 at the bottom of the title page, and some hearts to decorate the TBR page. For the rest of my monthly spreads, my plan is to include a few key pages each month. Since I filmed this while it was still mid-January, I wasn't able to fully complete my January spreads yet, but I'm excited to add more at the end of the month. So now that we are done with all of the spreads, let's go through the final setup in my journal together. First, we have the "This Book Belongs To" page, followed by my formal name page and my reading journal title page. Then comes my 2025 book count tracker and my bookish goals page. Then comes my 2025 bookish ins and outs page, where I documented what reading habits and trends I'm leaving behind in 2024 and what I'm embracing in 2025. After that is my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reading challenge page for the year, where I'm challenging myself with a few different reading goals associated with each number. Next up, we have my 25 books I want to read in 2025 spread, where I've already highlighted a few books I've read, like Blue Sisters, Intermezzo, and Cultish. By the end of the year, I'm hoping the entire page will be glowing with highlights. After that is my most anticipated 2025 releases page, where I'll highlight and check off books as I read them. I also left space to add more anticipated releases as the year goes on. Then comes my reading records spread, which is my nerdy Excel sheet on paper, where I will log every single book that I read this year. Next is my series tracker, where I'm keeping track of all the series that I'm currently reading, as well as some series that I would love to start this year. After that, we have my books per month tracker on the left, where I will fill in a bar graph to track how much I read each month, and my monthly favorites page on the right, where I'll highlight my favorite book of each month. Then there's my TBR cart spread here on the left, where I'm tracking the books on my physical TBR at the start of the year, and my Read the Rainbow challenge on the right, which I'm so excited about. We also have my reading bucket list, a spread that I am especially proud of because it is so fun and so pretty. And finally, we have my A to Z challenge spread, where I'm going to aim to read a book for every letter of the alphabet. I wrapped up with my January monthly spreads, which so far includes the title page and my TBR page, but I will be adding more to the January spreads later in the month. But for now, that is my completed 2025 reading journal. Thank you so much for following along with my setup. I hope you loved seeing these spreads come to life as much as I loved creating them. Okay, now that we have gone through the setup for my reading journal, I wanted to talk a little bit about the supplies that I used the most. So I actually have this big container right here that has all of my supplies. Let me grab it. First thing I did when I was going through my reading journal is I just kind of sketched out the ideas that I had for each page. So for that, I used this really thin lead pencil. I'll link all of this down below that I can. This is from Graph Gear, but it's a 0.3 thickness. So this was just a really nice thin light pencil where I was able to kind of lay out my ideas for each page, and then I went over it with pen or color or marker or whatever. And while I was doing that, using a ruler was definitely really helpful too. So any kind of straight edge will work. Then when it came to actually going over what I had written in pencil, I was going over it with these black pens from Pigma Micron. I have these in a bunch of different sizes, but I found I wasn't using anything thicker than maybe a 0.4 or 0.45, but I really liked the 0.2, 0.25, 0.3, like that range I felt like was a good thickness. So I used these pens to just kind of go over everything. I also will say having a really good eraser came in handy. So I would kind of erase from underneath the pen once I went over it to make sure that the pencil wasn't showing from underneath. Scissors, of course, I feel like this is self-explanatory. A lot of these are just kind of basic craft supplies. I also found having little binder clips to clip down the sides of the pages really helpful so that when I was erasing, the pages didn't get like messed up or anything like that. It really just held it in place. I also got some like glue tape from Amazon that was really helpful. I liked using this a bit more than the glue stick, but it was a little bit hard to get working sometimes. Like I felt like it wasn't always working really well. It was a little bit finicky. I feel like these aren't foolproof, but when they are working, I like them more. But also just having a glue stick on hand was really helpful for gluing down different like pieces into the spread. Another tool you may have seen me using a lot was this little like corner rounder thing. They kind of have different ways that they round the corner. Okay, another supply I loved using was this HP Sprocket printer. Anders actually got this for me for Christmas, but it was super easy to connect to my phone. And then I was able to just print out lots of different pictures and letters. And so anytime you saw me sticking down what looked like a custom kind of glossy sticker, I probably just got it off of Pinterest or like Google Images and then sent it to the HP Sprocket. And this is really nice because you don't have to buy ink for it. I think that it uses some kind of laser technology or like heat or something to print it without needing ink, which is so cool. So you just have to buy these little like printer paper sticker packs. Basically just prints on kind of like glossy photo paper, but it has a sticky back. So it's really easy to just peel off and stick on to the page. Another supply I really liked having was this. It's kind of just like a straight cutting mat type thing. You can put things through here and then just cut a straight line. So that was super helpful when needing to make quick cuts and wanting them to be straight, of course. Okay, let's talk markers for a second. So I really like a couple different markers. These I don't know how to say this brand, Staedtler Tri Plus fine liners. They come in a pack like this if you are familiar with this packaging, but they're just felt tip markers and they're pretty thin. They come in so many colors. As a lefty, I feel like felt tip pens don't smudge quite as bad as gel pens can, and I just think the felt looks nice in a reading journal like this. It kind of mimics the look of the markers a little bit more, and so it has more of a consistent look and feel. So I have these in like 20 different colors and really liked using these throughout the journal. I also have these Papermate Flare pens. These are also felt tip pens, and I have these in like maybe 15 colors or so. I didn't use these as much. Honestly, I feel like you just need one or the other. I don't feel like you need both, so both are good, whichever you prefer. Then as for highlighters, I use these Mr. Pen highlighters quite a bit in these like pastel colors. And then I also have my like mid liners from Amazon. So I'll just link it all down below. You can check it out. And then the other marker that I really liked using were the Crayola Super Tips. I got this recommendation from Rachel Catherine and these were great. I have a full box of these with 100 different colors. So there are so many and they didn't bleed through the 160 GSM at all. So I really liked that. They're really great for reading journals because they have a pretty fine tip. So you can hold it very straight on and get it pretty thin, or you can kind of hold it to the side and get a thicker line for shading. So these were great. Loved these. One of my favorite new tools is this little embossed label maker. This was so easy to use and so fun to kind of jazz up some spreads with a more custom look. So I was able to just kind of adjust the wheel, punch out the letters that I wanted to be on my label. And then I had this kind of embossed, engraved, whatever you want to call it, label. And there were a bunch of different colors of the kind of label tape that it comes with. So I had some nice pastels. It also comes with gold and black. So I really loved this little guy. And and they're very sticky, so they're not very easy to reposition, but I found this really helpful and I think it's super cute to add into spreads. I also had my vintage kind of typewriter letters. It kind of gives that typewriter look, and it comes with all the letters in lowercase and uppercase and numbers. So that was really nice. And for that too, I had a little ink pad of just black ink to stamp those out. And then the last few supplies I would say is just a ton of different kind of like scrapbook paper pieces. I had a bunch of this scrapbook paper in a ton of different colors, which I found really helpful to just liven up the page. And then I had some of these little like texture page pieces, which are nice if you want to add a little bit of texture. So I'll just link all this down below. These different like sticky notes like this with these grids and lines were also nice. And then also a ton of washi tape. So I'll link a bunch of this washi tape down below. One of my favorite washi tapes that I used throughout all the spreads was that book washi tape. I got that at a local shop though, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to link it, but I got everything else online. And then I also had these washi tape kind of stickers. So these are really easy to reposition. This is where I got most of the butterfly stickers. Okay, I think that's everything. But like I said, I'll link it all down below. And if you have any questions about any of my supplies or anything I was using to bring any of the spreads to life, just let me know in the comments and I'll try to get back to you. All right, and that is it for my 2025 reading journal setup. I hope you enjoyed seeing the process and the final flip through as much as I enjoyed putting it all together. Like I mentioned, this is my first time ever setting up a reading journal, and I just couldn't be happier with the way that it turned out. It's already making me so excited for all the books I'm going to read this year, and I'm just super excited to continue filling it out all throughout the year. And if you guys would want to see little clips, maybe in like doing bookish things, vlogs throughout the year of me updating my reading journal, definitely let me know in the comments down below. And if you're looking to start a reading journal for the first time, I hope that this video gave you some ideas to get started. Thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out with me today. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up down below. And if you're not already, be sure that you are subscribed for more bookish content. I'll see you guys soon in my next video. Bye!